This broadcast of INFocus is being made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by Cronin Toyota and Cronin Nissan, with over 70 cars inside their massive showroom so you can shop in comfort. Cronin Toyota and Cronin Nissan, 5601 National Road East.
Welcome to INFocus on WGTV's Channel 11. I'm Lauralee Hites, and I am guest hosting for Eric Marsh on a couple of episodes. So today we're going to be talking about Wayne County's downtowns. We want to think about why is it important to invest in Wayne County's small towns? What does it take from a community advocacy to grow those downtowns? We're going to talk about why it's important for all the community, Wayne County and outside of the community, to shop in those downtowns. So I want to welcome my guest, Gary Schuette from Hagerstown, Nettle Creek Hardware. And he is investing in Hagerstown's downtown as well as in the residential area. So I thought, what a great person to come on and talk about Hagerstown, what's going on. I love Hagerstown, it's a great community. So I want to welcome you.
Thank you, Lauralee.
So how long have you lived in Hagerstown?
I've been back in Hagerstown for about 23 years now. I was born and raised in Hagerstown, traveled throughout the state, went to college, came back 23 years ago.
So what brought you back? Why did you say, you had a chance to live in a bigger city or outside of Indiana? What made you want to come back and say, I want to live in the community that I was born in?
You know, I had the opportunity. I was working for a large corporation, so that 10 years I was gone. And, you know, wasn't happy in that. Wanted to get back to my hometown and get everything back to where I knew everybody that I saw.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the opportunity to come back to town, buy the hardware store there, and have been there ever since.
That had to have been a big risk, though. Like, to come back and say, I'm going to give up a corporate job, right? And I was a corporate person, too, so I can sympathize. And say, you know what, I'm going to give that up, and I'm going to, you know, buy this building and invest in this hardware store. Like, were you a little nervous?
Oh, I was a lot nervous.
A lot nervous. Okay, good.
You know, I was in my mid-20s at that point.
Really?
So, you know, it was a big risk to come back to town. And, you know, I remember the day I bought it, sat down on the steps, and it's like, what have I got myself into?
What have I done?
And here it's 23 years later.
That's fantastic. So what do you love about owning, you have two businesses, right? I want to make sure. So tell us a little bit about the two businesses.
Main business is Nettle Creek Hardware. We are a retail hardware store. We service everything, hardware, paint, plumbing, electrical, lawn and garden, you know, the whole gamut of things for your home repairs. The other business that we started about 10 years ago was the Boot Box. We sell retail footwear, safety shoes for the corporate client. So we have a very large trade area there, as well as the rural ag market.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's fantastic. So when you bought the Boot Box, so that would have been, you said 10 years ago?
Yes.
It's already been 10 years.
10 years.
Wow. So those are two pretty significant investments. So what do you like about owning businesses downtown? And Boot Box is literally downtown. I know Nettle Creek's out a little bit further, but what do you like about it?
You know, there's a lot of things to like about owning small businesses in a downtown environment or in a very small community. You have the sense of, you know your customers, you know your clientele, you know your fellow business neighbors. And you know when you do something as that business, whatever it be, you know most likely it's going to affect people you know for the positive or negative. So you always have to look out for what's going to happen and what you can do and make an impact for your community and your downtown.
I think that matters.
It matters a lot.
I would say, to me, it really matters. I think it, you know, for me, I do business in Wayne County, and I work within this small community, and reputation matters, right? And
Correct.
So when you say that, what I hear is, reputation matters. I want to make sure that I'm having a good product or providing great service, because in a small town, it's easy to get around that if you're not doing that. So
Yes.
I get it. I totally understand that. So one of the things we want to talk about in why small towns matter and why investing in them matters. So from your perspective, and given that you have lived other places and came back, what do you think, what do you think people may be missing when they think, I want to move away and go to Indianapolis, or I want to go down to Cincinnati? What do you think that they're missing overlooking small towns?
I think they're missing a lot of, I don't want to say culture, but community more so. Yes, you're going to get culture when you go to those bigger cities. Mm-hmm. You're going to have more activities to do, more things to entertain you. But do you really feel a sense of community when you live in a sprawling subdivision or a sprawling apartment complex?
Right.
How many neighbors do you know? And do your neighbors care about you? In a small town, your neighbors pretty much care about you, and they're going to look out for you at all times.
So tell me a little bit about how I met you was through Heart of Hagerstown. So for the viewers that are watching, this is how we got to know each other, through Heart of Hagerstown. And the thing I really valued about this group is, keep me honest here, is really community members, business owners that came together and said, we want to make a difference in Hagerstown. We want to continue to grow it. We want to continue to invest in it. And we want to do it kind of from a grassroots effort. And that, to me, I see residents participating and wanting to invest. Is that what Heart of Hagerstown is?
That is absolutely what Heart of Hagerstown is. Heart of Hagerstown is, the membership is based on anybody that lives in our zip code, 47346. So we're not limiting it just to Hagerstown's proper city limits. It's anybody that's interested and that lives in our zip code. We all have a vested interest in it. Mm-hmm. Currently I live outside of city limits, so if we limit it to city limits, then I wouldn't be a member of it. So it's anybody that's interested. There's lots of business owners that do not live in Hagerstown proper. And we have more than just business owners. We have the library people are on our board. We have citizens, just normal residents that are on our board. And it's anybody that's interested in growing Hagerstown. And it's absolutely a grassroots. We have funded everything on our own.
That's fantastic.
Got all of our paperwork done. And any activities we do, we fund them ourselves. When we first became Heart of Hagerstown, our first major project was we got our Indiana Main Street designation. And that's a great designation to have.
It does.
And we'll still, we haven't seen a lot of benefit from it yet, but that's things that come in time. Mm-hmm. That's not a project you put together in 6 months. It's 3 years.
Yes, I would say it does take time for you to get some traction under you, and how do we implement a 4-point plan, which is a lot of what Main Street designation, they can provide help in doing that. But they also provide grants and other things that having that designation matters. It also helps from a marketing and tourism perspective, so that people know that that's designated Main Street. They may have unique shops and an experience there. So I think investing in it is absolutely the right step. So one of the things that from just a person that lives in a small town, and I live rural most of the time. I live in, I'm in the triangle. I'm right between Centerville, Cambridge City, and Hagerstown, and I frequent all three of them. Mm-hmm. That's where the majority of my business and my money goes, is in those communities. It's convenient for me. But one of the things I hear a lot is that people look for this large outside investment. They think, we need some big investor to come in and buy Autocar and fix that building, or buy another building. We need these big, large investors outside. And what I've seen in working in the community development space is small incremental changes, or those tiny things add up in a meaningful way. And so one of the things that I think you're working on, and I hope it's public knowledge at this point, is some lights. Is that right?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about that.
We're getting ready to go through and redo all of our downtown streetlights, give it a new look. That's going to go, they start up here this fall. We're working on that. With those new streetlights will come probably new park benches, new planters, new trash cans. It's time just to freshen up our downtown look.
Those are those small, and you think they're they're small, but they're meaningful.
Yes.
They're hugely impactful from a quality of place. And so, for example, sidewalks, are you looking at extending some of your sidewalks or improving sidewalks?
We will probably get new sidewalks in the downtown district probably next year. They're going to be pushed on time this year. But yeah, new sidewalks in the downtown business district. And that'll make that a lot better. You know, it'll make it a lot nicer. It's time to update.
Yep, I agree. And that's the incremental changes that I think are the most impactful. It's great if a community can, you know, bring in a large investor from outside. That's great. But at the end of the day, it's those small incremental changes that are often done at the resident level. Everything from planting flowers to the lights, to extending sidewalks, making it more walkable, making it a place where I can sit down, like having outdoor seating or having an outdoor table where if you and I are walking, we can have a seat and have a conversation at a table. Those are the things that are meaningful for residents and community members, and it's not this large, let's go and add another Dollar General or another, you know, big investor comes in and buys more space. It's the little things, and I kind of think of it like little things matter. Those things start to add up. So one of the things we also hear a lot about is authenticity. So how do you balance being your authentic town and compared to, you know, being open to new progressive ways? And I think that from my perspective, I see that communities really struggle with this. We have a foot in our history and we have a foot in the future. And how do we bring those two things together so that we still can say we have a brand or our own culture like you used? So when you think about authentic Hagerstown, what makes Hagerstown unique? Like, what's the thing that you think we have this and other folks don't, or other communities don't? And that could be a restaurant, a business, culture. It could be a lot of things. What do you think it is?
You know, I think it's a good mix of things for Hagerstown. You know, we have lots of destination type businesses in our town, and I guess that's what I look at there. And they're destination types of all different types of businesses, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a candy store, whether it's an antique store. We're not one focused destination. You know, we kind of have, I don't want to say a mix or an eclectic mix of businesses, but we attract lots of different people with our destination businesses. And one of those, you know, would be the boot box. You know, not every resident in Hagerstown needs a pair of boots, but we have a very large trade area that brings those people in as a destination.
They come in to buy them, but maybe I'll go to the restaurant or something else.
And the same thing, they'll bring them in for the restaurant, and maybe they'll come right back and buy a pair of boots, whether it's that trip or the next trip. So, you know, we have lots of destination type. You know, we're not just one focus of business community.
So what do you think is the future of towns like Hagerstown and maybe other small towns? So what do you think, as you're looking into the future as a business owner and you're thinking about how buying behaviors change and consumers change and some of the challenges that we have in front of us, if you had a magic wand, what would you do to, you know, bring to Hagerstown, or do, like, what's on the horizon for Heart of Hagerstown for you personally?
You know, I wish we all had that magic wand.
I do too. If I had that, I'm telling you, Gary, I would whip that sucker out all the time.
Yes.
I would be making all kinds of magic happen.
You know, I think as business owners, we have to just look at what our consumers want, and we're in a need it now market. That's where you have to serve. We're never going to compete or outwin the online presence.
Right.
You know, we have to be items or products that the consumer needs now. You know, hardware is a good example. You can't wait to fix that faucet.
When I owned when I owned an investment property in Hagerstown, I spent a lot of time there because, like you said, it's a need it now. Something broke and I need to go get it fixed, and I can't wait to fix the lock on the door, or, you know, whatever it is. I need paint is an example. I don't want to order paint online. That's the kind of thing. I'm not a big person to buy shoes online either because I want to be able to try them on. So I like how you framed it as need it now.
Yeah.
And restaurants are another good example. I don't want to order my food and wait for it to come in online. Maybe someday, but not today. Today I want to go out and experience really good food with my family. So,
you know, we just have to focus on that need it now. We can't look at fulfilling future needs that, you know, the consumer can meet by going online. So, you know, take care of their immediate needs and give them that assortment and product and that price that fulfills those needs. So you just kind of got to figure that out and offer everything, you know. And it's kind of like in the hardware. We do lots of different things, and we have people go, well, I didn't know you carried that. Well, you can't just be stuck in a traditional hardware store. You know, you have to be kind of a little bit of everything. And I think that's as merchants in retail downtown areas, you kind of have to be a little bit of everything. You know, find your focus, but yet don't be afraid to venture out.
And I think bring in expertise too. So if you have, I've gotten a lot of advice, you know, when I'm in there looking for something very specific that I'm not exactly sure I need help with, maybe a disc or like a saw. I was looking for a very specific blade. I wouldn't have known where to go to get the information. So I think having information and being able to educate the public, whoever that customer is, I think that's something that's a differentiator too. So let's talk about, when you think about from a viewer perspective and people that are watching, why would they want to come to Hagerstown? So tell me some about your best festivals or events that you have going on that you're really proud of.
You know, we have several different festivals throughout the year. We really start here in September. The last weekend of September, we have a fall festival. Kids basically is the focus of that. Free carnival games, free pumpkin decorating. We also have street vendors that come in that day to sell, you know, a whole variety of items. I skipped one. Jubilee Days comes up here in August.
Oh yeah, Jubilee Days right around the corner.
So yeah, Jubilee Days here in mid-August. You know, that's a 2-day festival brought to you by our local Lions Club. So they bring lots of people in, lots of homecoming type things, lots of class reunions.
Oh, yeah.
They have a parade on Saturday. So, you know, that's our big reunion festival, and everybody's coming back home for that event. Fall Festival is more for the locals there that are here every day. And then we have a Christmas festival, hometown Christmas celebration in December. Yeah. So lots of different things.
All right, awesome. So we've got just a couple minutes left, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how, if somebody's interested in getting involved in their local community, and I know you're very involved, being in part of Heart of Hagerstown, what would you give them as advice on getting involved and being part of changing, whether they live here in Wayne County or somewhere else in a small town or maybe a little bit bigger city? What's your advice to getting involved and why it's important?
You know, we all drive our communities by what we do in them. Yeah. We can't always expect other people to do them. So my biggest advice to boards, citizens, whoever it may be, you know, if you want to get involved, great, get involved. Let's pick a project and own the project. We all can come up with great ideas, and we all come up with them every day, all day long, but we expect others to do it. But if you really want it done, come up with the idea or grab somebody else's idea and just run with it.
Yeah.
You know, take ownership of it and see it through. It takes dedication, it takes hours, and it takes commitment.
But I think at the end you have this really nice result, whatever that is, that you are empowered to participate. And I love how you say, don't wait on somebody else. So if this is something you're passionate about, get involved, get engaged in the community. So I want to take a moment to just thank you for coming on today. I know we just met recently, and I feel like, come on, Gary, come talk to me.
Come do this.
Yeah, come do this. But I think it's so important for viewers to know that we have such great communities in Wayne County, that visiting that downtown, eating in the restaurants, shopping, it matters. It matters to our local economy, our county economy, and I think it matters to the residents to be able to invite other people to come and visit Hagerstown. So I'm encouraging everyone, and that's why I wanted to bring you on and talk to you about it. So thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you as well, Lauralee.
You are watching INFocus on WGTV's Channel 11. We've been talking about Wayne County's small towns. We've been talking about why it's important to shop downtown, invest in downtown, live and work in downtown. Coming up next, we're going to be talking to someone from Cambridge City about all the great things happening out there. Join us. Welcome back to INFocus on WGTV Channel 11. I'm Lauralee Hites, and I'm filling in for Eric. And I'm so excited. My next guest is Nick Elder from Cambridge City. We're talking about downtowns, small towns, why it's important to invest in downtowns. Why do you want to shop there? Why do you want to live there and work there? So I'm really excited to learn about Nick and your journey and living in Cambridge City and why you're investing there. So welcome, Nick.
Well, thank you, Lauralee. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. Perfect. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you a native to Cambridge City in this area? Did you move here? Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I'm not native. I grew up in Lebanon, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati, right around Kings Island.
Yep.
Grew up there, joined the United States Navy, spent 8 years in the Navy.
You did?
Yep. I've got 8 years of service behind me, and I went to work for Dillard's Department Stores.
Yeah.
And I met Tanya, and she is from Connorsville. So we made a compromise and we moved to Western Wayne County. We had been set up in another antique mall for an extended period of time in a booth situation, and we had the opportunity to purchase a building outright, and we couldn't pass it up, and we both left the corporate world behind and said, we're going to jump in with both feet.
That is fantastic.
I wouldn't suggest buying a business, buying a home, quitting both of your full-time jobs within like a 6-month period.
So is that the advice to viewers? If you're going to do this.
The advice to viewers is if you're going to do this, try to do one of a few things. Don't do it all at once. But I think there's a lot of studies that would tell you that that's a recipe for disaster. But we've had a great time doing it. So,
good.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in Cambridge?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So you bought a business downtown. You have an antique store. So tell me a little bit about when you chose Western Wayne. You came here through an employer.
Sure.
But once you got into Cambridge City and you said, you know what, as you and your wife were talking, let's buy this building, let's invest in downtown. Like, what drove you to do that?
Tanya and I both have always had the mindset that you don't just live somewhere and live there, work there, and then go home at the end of the day. It's about investing in your community. It's about investing in the place you live. And if we are not investing back into our community, and if we're not taking the time to make our community a stronger, better place to live, work, and play, then we're not part of the solution. We're just part of the continuing problem. So being an active participant in your community, I feel, is very, very important.
So when you think about it, you've been there for 5 years, and I was actually born and raised in Wayne County, and I lived 100 years ago in this little town. There was the coffee pot, and it was right on 40. My mom worked there. We lived across the street. I was like in first grade. So I've been very familiar with Cambridge City for many, many years, and it was when I moved out that way, and I live kind of in between Cambridge and Centerville and Hagerstown. I kind of live like right out in the country, and I now shop and do most of my service right there, Cutshaw's Market and things like that in Cambridge. It was like coming home for me.
Sure.
But there's been this kind of a revolution or evolution, I guess I would say, in Cambridge City, and they've really reinvented themselves, and I think it is such a testament to the community itself rising up. So when you got there 5 years ago, where were they in that transition? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
You know, I'm very proud of Cambridge City. 5 years ago, we were just on the cusp. Jim King, the head of our Main Street Association, I think adequately says it, that, you know, for a long time, Cambridge City has been on the verge of greatness and maybe not doing so hot. We've been right on that cusp.
Yeah,
and
the pinnacle could go either way.
Sure. And they were working towards where kind of we are now, and we still have a long way to go. But the key was to make sure we didn't have abandoned properties, to make sure that all the buildings were full, to make sure that there was adequate things for people to do in Cambridge City, and we'll talk all about that. But I think they were on the verge of starting a lot of these initiatives 5 years ago.
Right when you got in.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And certainly it was active before we got there.
Sure.
But that's part of our reason for investing as much as we have in Cambridge City, is because we believe in it.
You saw what was happening.
Sure.
You're saying, hey, these community members, they genuinely care about this community.
Sure.
This is a place that's going to continue to grow.
Sure.
Let's invest here.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. And the other businesses in town, you know, part of a measure of success is if you view yourself as a lone entity and you say that, well, I'm just going to do for me what's best for me. The problem with that logic is that you can end up on a very lonely island.
Yeah.
And so if the other businesses in town are successful, if we do an event like we did this past weekend where we have 30 vendors set up and for Wayne County weekends, and it was a great deal.
I was there.
The good news is places like the Number 9 Grill, King's Cafe, Lumpy's, they had incredible days too. And I couldn't be happier for them. And if they have a special running at King's Cafe and it draws people to town and while they're here, they come to our shops, what an amazing community to live in that we all support each other. And I'm very happy to be a part of that.
I think it's that high tide raises all boats,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So instead of being on that island by yourself, instead you're surrounded by what I would think of peers, colleagues, other people that you want to see be successful. And at the end of the day, it makes the entire community successful.
Sure.
Whether I own a business or I don't, the fact that I live there and people are investing and they truly care about downtown and as well as the rest of the community. So what are the things that, when you think about the future of small towns, and this is something that weighs on my mind a lot. We see, some of these even smaller, bigger cities. So, for example, Lexington. It's not a huge city, but people go there. They see that as an opportunity. And you actually came from a larger city or being outside of one and moved to that smaller community. If you think about the future of small towns, what does that look like in your mind? Like, how do these small towns continue to thrive and be successful?
As an example, I told you I grew up in Lebanon, Ohio. 20 years ago, I graduated with just over 300 students. They'll graduate 1,200 students this year.
Wow.
And that's in a 20-year period. Over in Warren County, Ohio, the area I grew up in, they have 3 schools in that county that'll graduate over 1,000 children this year. So the population has just skyrocketed.
In certain areas.
In certain areas.
Yep.
Using that as a model, what they've done is they've focused on quality of place issues. They focused on building up that infrastructure, and I don't mean just streets and roads and sewers. There are things for people to do. There are reasons for people to invest, and there are reasons for people to say, I'm a young family. I'm a recent college graduate. I'm looking to relocate for work. This would be a great place to raise my kids. This would be a great place to raise my family. Some of the struggle that we have in Western Wayne is geography, not being necessarily centrally located to major metropolises.
Right.
It's 50 minutes to get to Indianapolis. It's 20 or so to get to Richmond, which is not the end of the world, but it is a deterrent for some folks.
But the upside for some folks is that I can make that commute 50 minutes, and the rest of the time I don't have that traffic. And I look at the work itself is changing.
Sure.
So I've been a remote worker for 15 years. I worked from home before it was cool to work from home.
Yeah.
And so from my point of view, yes, I have to do business in Indianapolis, or I had to fly out of that airport. But when I came home, I didn't have the traffic. I didn't have those things. And so the affordable and cost of living in my scenario works out great. I work remote, I live remote, and when I need something in a big city, I can go there, but I don't have it every single day.
Sure.
And I really enjoy the affordability and the affordability piece. So I agree with you that it depends on who that person is, whether it's commuting or not. But when you think about the future of work and how we're going to do the work, is it going to be more remote? Is it going to be, what are those jobs going to look like? And is this the right community for me to be able to do that?
Tony and I talk about that frequently. We'll go to a Reds game or we'll go visit my folks in Cincinnati. And every time I get stuck in traffic and every time that I go out to eat, I say, I am so thankful that I
don't
live
have
in,
to do this
that
every
I live
day.
in
That's
Milton,
right.
Indiana, and I don't have to. I
do
can go have my fun and visit, but then at the end of the day, I can come home to Wayne and Wayne County and enjoy my time living in Milton. So
one of the things that I think other small communities are looking at is this: we need this outside investment. We've got to have somebody come in and and we've had that. So we've got the investment from Dot Foods years ago and Sugar Creek, and we have some of those large employers and large investment. But there's also this idea that that will be what solves our problems. And what do you think about this, top down versus bottoms up, and kind of the idea of, is it a right mix maybe to have both?
Sure.
So tell me your thoughts a little bit about that.
Well, certainly a mix is needed, and this is not detracting from Daughter Sugar Creek because they have been incredible community partners.
Right, I agree.
Sugar Creek has invested in the old Cambridge City School.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to make it a daycare facility, and one of the things they're doing, they're partnering with the local community, so they're obviously first shot at those spots are going to go to the Sugar Creek employees' children,
Yeah.
but any spots that are left unfilled are going to go at low to no cost to local families.
Which I think is so wonderful from
Absolutely.
an employer standpoint, and from
Right.
how do you attract the talent.
Right.
You know, if one of the things that they, a big hurdle
Right.
is getting that affordable daycare, they're meeting that need. So I have so many great things to say about
Right.
Sugar Creek and,
Yeah.
and Dot Food and being just good partners. But
You know, you think a lot about what it means when you buy an antique from my store or one of the countless other stores in town, or if you go to a major box retailer. Both have their positives and both have their negatives. You just had on the owner of the Nettle Creek hardware store.
yeah,
When I buy something from him, all of those dollars I give to him go back into his local community in several forms. One, he can sponsor the Little League baseball teams, the soccer teams. He sponsors the banners at the football games.
Yeah.
He helps the schools out, makes large donations to the schools, I'm sure. The other thing it does is he lives here. And so when I give him $10, a portion of that $10 at least is going to stay in the local community. When you come in and buy something off me at my antique store, what I do with that, with the profits, is I pay local taxes. I go to Cut Shaw's and buy my food. I have breakfast at Lumpy's Cafe. I go to the local gas stations. I have my money in one of many banks in Cambridge City. So when you pay that money to me, multiple things are happening. We're reinvesting in our schools. We're reinvesting in feeding Western Wayne and the Western Wayne Food Pantry. We're doing those things as good community partners. But I also am your neighbor, and I live here. And so my money is staying here in Wayne County. And that's something that folks really have to remember. That,
I agree.
That I directly and indirectly am supporting the Number 9 Grill because I patronize them. I'm supporting the local car washes and the local gas stations. So it has a very real trickle-down effect.
I agree. And I think that's where that hoping that a big development comes in, because we hear a lot about that. And I was actually just reading an article this morning about opportunity zones and how important those are. And I know Wayne County and Richmond specifically is looking into opportunity zones. But I also think about this investment or the community advocacy, right? So how do I advocate on behalf of my own community as a resident?
Sure.
And bringing the community together to solve some of their own problems, whether that's how do we get rid of blight, how do we engage with our community, how do we make those quality of place initiatives. So when you think about living in Cambridge City and having community involvement,
Right.
what do you think, what have been some of the fruits of that labor? Can you tell me a little bit about how community activism or coming together, what are some of the things that have happened?
Well, you know, oftentimes folks tend to view large government organizations or large nonprofit organizations as a solution to the problem. And although that's a piece of the puzzle, in my personal opinion, it starts at a very local level. It starts with having our neighbors decide that they care about their property enough to cut the grass,
Right.
to care about their property enough to take care of their driveway and to take out the trash. That's what it starts with. Taking care of blighted properties. I go on Thursdays, all last school year, to Western Wayne Elementary School. Not me, not just me. A lot of volunteers do this. And I see what the community involvement looks like at that level. And we have a very small school district. We graduated 60 plus kids this year.
Really?
Lincoln High School graduated just over 60 kids.
Well, George Philhauer's doing some awesome things over there.
Right.
So I'm.
When we talk with George and we talk with Renee Lakes and Jessica Neal at the school districts, one thing that they are encouraging us to do as community members is to come into the schools, help tutor, help sit in the lunchrooms, help mentor the kids. Communities and Schools is doing a lot of good things out in Western Wayne County.
Yeah.
But in saying the size of Lincoln schools, I don't view it as a negative. I think it's a great thing that these kids all know their neighbors. They all know every kid in their class. They're on a first name basis with the teachers. They know them one-on-one. The only trouble when you have a smaller school district is that the resources may not be available to the teachers. So in larger districts, they may have, teachers' aides in multiple classrooms, and they might have, they don't have to have lunchroom duty and recess duty. They can take some time and plan their classes. They don't have that ability over there. It's just the nature of being in a smaller school. So what they need is they need us to come in and take an active role in these kids' lives. That's one example. We do a program called Feeding Western Wayne in partnership with the Resurrected Church in Pershing. We're just a small part of it. But every Thursday, we feed 150 to 200 people hot meals.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and
that's fantastic.
They'll give out, between 150 and 200 meals. At the Cambridge City Christian Church, they house the Western Wayne Food Pantry. Mm-hmm. This Saturday, as an example, they'll give out between 100 and 200 sets of sacks of groceries, potatoes. We have a clothing closet. Poverty is an issue, and low income is an issue in Western Wayne County. It's not something that we cannot overcome, but it's going to take us as a community to pull ourselves up and to do those things like when you see your neighbor doesn't have a hot meal, maybe we get our neighbor a hot meal. And that can be the first step to getting them back on track, whatever that looks like. So I think community involvement is the key to most of our issues that we have to overcome in Cambridge City.
I agree. So when you talk about what do you think, if you had a magic wand, what could you make happen, and what would you like to see happen in Cambridge City? What would you like to see, whether that's a new business or maybe a couple new businesses, or like what do you think we as community members in Cambridge City should be doing? Like what do you want to bring?
So when Tanya and I worked at department stores, we would tell customers that came in all the time, they would say, well, I can't believe that you guys are no longer carrying this brand. I can't believe you don't have any of XYZ product. And we would say to them, as graciously as we could, well, when was the last time that you were in the store? When was the last time you bought from us? When was the last time that you came in to look for that particular product? What I would encourage folks to do is come shop. Come to our locations. Go and have instead of going to, somewhere, going out of town to get a cup of coffee, why don't you come on down to King's Cafe? Instead of going to, somewhere else to go get breakfast, why don't you go over to Lumpy's and have something to eat? So partaking in the local economy and being a part of that local economy is very, very crucial.
How do you see Cambridge City growing in the future? Like what would you bring? Whether it's a certain type of business, more activities, would you want to focus on quality of place initiatives or maybe expanding the park? So I'll give you a quick example. I was listening to this podcast about small communities, and I'm really digging in on how communities solve problems and listening to some of the unique things that they've done from a quality of place perspective. And one of the things we look at from an asset-based community standpoint is you look at what those assets are. And this town in Alabama, they had a lot of bamboo, for example. I had no idea that they even had bamboo in Alabama, so this was like a learning experience for me. But from that, they started to build bamboo bicycles, and from there they began to sell them online. So, and these are really cool bicycles. And I was so impressed that they took an asset that they had already existing, and they turned it into an actual product that was unique to that. And it's a very, very small town in Alabama. And the other example that this community worked on, opening up a butterfly sanctuary. So they happened to already have a lot of really beautiful flowers. They came together as a community and said, what do we have from an asset standpoint? We've got these beautiful flowers. We know that a lot of butterflies come in there. How do we turn this into something that attracts people? And it became a butterfly sanctuary. So if you were thinking about Cambridge City and what assets that they have and what would encourage people to want to visit, shop, live, play, what would be something that would come to mind?
Sure. A couple things. Affordable, quality family housing, new home building in Cambridge City so that folks who choose to come there have a place to, frankly, to live.
So improved housing.
Improved quality, affordable housing. One of the things that we're known for, obviously, is our antiques district. If you go to places like Dresden, Ohio, it's probably not a good example because they're hurting now, but in Dresden, Ohio, it's the home of Longaberger baskets. So the entire town of Dresden, Ohio said,
built around that.
Well, they said Longaberger's here, so they have cottage industry. I mean, they've got this place sells this, all associated with that. The town has done that very well and embrace the antiques district. What I would like to see more is out of Cambridge City, not that we don't have this already, but a pride in place and a pride in community. When we have things like Canal Days and we have things like, there's some things in the works for the fall, community projects where we have community nights out, those type of things.
Oh, yeah.
Food trucks coming in and doing some community dining events. And, the beauty of being in a town as small as Cambridge City or Milton or Pershing and Dublin, that kind of thing, is that you know everybody. Well, the good news about knowing everybody is you become family.
Yeah.
And my mom is amazed every time she comes up and goes to church with us, and then we go to Lumpy's and eat, and she goes, how do you know? I said, well, Mom, there's as many people in this town as graduated from the high school that I came from.
It's pretty easy to get to know people.
It's pretty easy to know everybody.
Yeah.
But that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And we need to embrace that. Some of the challenge is making that decision. How big do you want to be? Mm-hmm. How fast do you want to get there? And do you want to be a bigger town? I heard a lot of concern in the last year and a half with, well, if X business brings in another 500 workers, well, I mean, where are they going to live?
Yeah.
Where are they going to eat? Are the schools prepared for it? Where do they go grocery shopping? There won't be any parking in town. My answer to that is, well, then I guess you build a bigger school. And I guess we build some more houses.
Yeah.
And I guess we expand the downtown parking and create, I don't know, community parking lots or something. I don't know all the answers. Some would argue that I don't know much. But I will say that having that mindset that we are going to be successful and we are going to grow, we can temper that growth. Do we want to have, do we want to be a town of 20,000? I mean, there's a lot of folks in Cambridge who would disagree with that. Do we want to continue to see the population decline? I would really challenge anyone to say that that's an okay thing.
Right.
So somehow we have to stem that tide.
And I think that is a balance of, based on the residents that you have today. So as people retire, or are they going to move wherever their children are located?
Sure.
And so that then stimulates depopulation. Is there enough work there? And I feel like we do have such good partners in Cambridge City that with Dot Foods and with Sugar Creek and others, small businesses included, that there is a lot of employment opportunity there. But it's how do you start to attract people to move there? And one of the big holdbacks will be housing. If there's not enough housing for sale, if there's not enough housing stock to begin with, you're not going to be able to recruit or bring people or attract people to live there.
One of the challenges is finding that balance between being a suburb of Richmond and
You're using that term very loosely. I can tell.
Very loosely. And being a part of the greater Wayne County area and still maintaining our personal identity as Cambridge City. And I think we are slowly turning that page and saying there's nothing wrong with Richmond. There's nothing wrong with Centerville or Hagerstown or Fountain City. They have their own unique qualities, and we're so happy to be a part of this county. But we have our own individual thing going on in Cambridge City. We are an antiques district. We are a thriving community that is really trying to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And we're more than just a little brother, a little sister of Richmond, but maintaining that connection to Richmond and greater Wayne County. That's sort of been a challenge for us.
Tell me more about that. So what do you think is a challenge?
Well, one, I think it's always a challenge living in the shadow of a larger city. And a challenge, frankly, for us has been, there are a lot of folks that live in Richmond or Centerville or what have you, Fountain City, who come into our shops and say, I didn't even know you guys were here.
Yeah.
And I say, you're 15 minutes down the road. But in all fairness, I don't get out probably as much as I should.
So you're encouraging them to say, if you're watching this and you've not been to Cambridge City lately, if you're watching this and you haven't been out to Hagerstown, maybe you haven't been to Fountain City lately, get out there and patronize those businesses and see, what's going on, what's happening in these towns.
There's so much out there as a county that I'm proud to live in.
Yeah.
But there's more out here there's more in Cambridge City, Fountain City, Hagerstown, the whole Western Wayne area. There's a lot to be discovered, and I'm very proud of it. And some folks would say I'm a homer, but I am unashamedly a champion of Cambridge City and of Western Wayne County. I think it's a great place to live, work, and play. And I'm proud to own a business there. I want everyone to know about it. We have to get some of our challenges getting on to the mountaintop and screaming, "We're here."
Yeah,
and come, and we would love to see you, and we'd love to have you, and we'll buy you a cup of coffee. Just come to town, give us a shot. And it's maybe a chip on our shoulder as a kind of a smaller town in the county, but I'll wear that chip. That's fine. Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
I think they've done a lot of things, and
Sure.
they've gotten the attention to
Sure.
say, "Wow, they're really revitalizing over there."
Yep.
And, I think that goes back to investing in
Sure.
your local downtown. It's really saying to the community members, are you ready to buy that building and make that investment and open up that local store, whatever that may be?
Yep.
So one of the things that a lot of small communities are challenged with is this idea of appreciating the rich history. And so just living on the fact that Wayne County sits on 40 and there's so much rich history about Old National Road 40. In addition to, they have antiques, they have this kind of wonderful, rich history, but then there's this, how do we move forward and
Sure.
embrace the future?
Absolutely.
And so many communities kind of have this tug and pull back and forth, and they say, what are we, but how do we still appreciate the past? Do you feel like Cambridge City has found the balance in that, or do you think they're still kind of figuring out how do we appreciate our past and yet still look forward?
I think we're working on it.
Yeah.
We have a very rich history, as you said, out in Western Wayne County. My late dear friend, Mary Jo Sloniker, was who just recently passed. Her passion in life was the Single G mural and remembering Single G, the racehorse from Cambridge City. We had the old canal. We've got the Abraham Lincoln funeral train came through. We've got very, very deep, rich history roots. We're working on it in the sense that some of our challenge is, to go back to my previous point, deciding that it's okay to remember all those things and to stand on that bedrock, but it's okay to move forward and get larger and to attract new business, and it's okay to move in a progressive fashion and to get bigger and to attract more people and to open more businesses. That's a challenge, I think, in a lot of small towns.
Yeah. Is that finding the balance?
Finding
we don't
the
want to be
balance.
really big, but if we can't ignore that depopulation
Right.
may be happening.
Right.
We do need to attract people, but what is the right number of people?
Right.
And then again, we go back to that. You've got to have the housing there
Sure.
to
Right.
to have somewhere for people to live.
We tend to have this philosophy, I think, countywide, and it's open to interpretation. But if we attract these large manufacturing companies, one, that they're the answer to all the problems, and two, once they get here, then they'll help us fix our community. Something that has worked in other places that I've lived and that I've been a part of those communities is it's sort of like selling your house. You don't put your house on the market, get a realtor, and put the sign in the yard, and then decide to remodel the bathroom, put a fresh coat of paint, update the landscaping. You do all those things first.
Yeah.
And then once your house is marketable, and once your house is where you think, okay, this will lead to a better investment for us, then you call the real estate agent, then you put your house on the market. And I think that there's a need for both. And I'm not critical of places like Blue Buffalo or Dodd or Sugar Creek or any of those large manufacturing companies coming in. I'm glad they're here. But we need to do a better job, and I'll be specifically talking about Western Wayne. We need to do a better job of making ourselves more marketable to these large companies, because the idea that they're going to invest in your community the way it is now, and when they get here, they're just going to throw money at you and help you fix all of your woes. I don't happen to subscribe to that. I think
So you're thinking, so how do we as a community improve beautification? So
Sure.
In your mind, how do you make that change happen? So if you think about engagement of the residents that live there to paint, to plant flowers, to mow their lawn, to take that pride. And I think that was something you said in the very beginning of the interview, is just be proud of where you live.
Right.
So how do you think that could happen? Like, what are the steps that a community should be taking? Or if I'm somebody that's watching this, like, what should I do to start getting involved and help beautify my neighborhood? Like, what do you think those answers are?
Sure. So the community leaders, whether they're governmental, nonprofits, business community, have got to get buy-in from the local populace. If you don't get people to buy in on the idea that Cambridge City is a great place to be, that Milton's a great place to be, that Dublin and Pershing are great places to be, if you don't get that buy-in from the locals, then you've got nothing. You've got yourselves here saying we would like to see all of this happen, and you don't have the local folks who have really bought into it.
But how do you do that, though? So if I'm sitting here and I'm watching this, and I live in one of the smaller towns, and I'm like, I hate living here. This is terrible.
Sure.
Like, how do you change the mindset to love where you live? And because you are so passionate about where you live, and I'm somebody that has moved and came back a few times. So. And now today I sit back and say there was a time that I didn't want to live here because I didn't see the opportunity. And now I love where I live. Sure. I love physically where I live. I love this community, and I enjoy being part of it. And that was a transition I had to make on my own. If somebody's watching this saying, you know, I don't enjoy living here, how do you change that? Like, how do you get people to love where they live? What do you think they should be doing?
Well, what we're going to do come the fall, and this is spoiler alert, what we're going to do come the fall, there's ideas in the works for food truck Fridays, for first Fridays or first Saturdays where the stores stay open late. We may have a wine and beer gardens, outdoor activities for folks. We're talking about we're in the process of working on having community movie nights. We happen to have a store that has a very good sized white side of our building.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to project movies up on there, free for the community, to have food trucks come, local vendors set up, finding things and I totally understand the point made. We have to find things for the folks to do, to be proud of Cambridge City. And so we have to provide them with things to do. Fireworks are a great example of it. You know, we've got the Chamber of Commerce puts on fireworks every year, and the fire department puts on fireworks every year. You could throw a baseball in Cambridge City and not hit anyone because everyone is at the park watching these, and it is so
it's like a ghost town at the fireworks, right?
Sure,
so
it is.
Driving
Everyone's
down,
there.
Where is everyone?
Well, you know, I was very, very proud of our town. A couple months ago, our Lincoln Golden Eagle softball team, they were playing in a regional game, and we showed up over at Dublin at the softball park thinking, you know, we just want to be supportive and come see, the Lady Golden Eagles play, want to support them.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anyone anywhere else in Western Wayne County except at the softball diamond. The only place I know where you can go and get 500-600 people watching a regional softball game at little old Dublin Park. And that's an idea of how the community can really rally around.
And become prideful,
And
right?
become prideful.
Yep. So the key, or what I think I hear you saying is it's having something to do, knowing your neighbors, genuinely caring about them, and having being a part of something. So I think, you know, when I look at Cambridge City and how this revitalization has happened, it's you're part of something, and the more you become invested in whatever that's going to be, the more you feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself.
Sure.
And I need to stay here and see this through, and I need to be, or at least from my perspective, involved. And there you begin to build friendships, and from friendships you have, long-lasting relationships that at the end of the day you make you feel better about where you live. So I think that's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. You know, we have generations that have raised their families in Cambridge City and Western Wayne County, and you also have folks like Tanya and I who, although she's from Connersville, she wasn't born and raised in Western Wayne, and I certainly was not born and raised around here. But we've made that decision to see the community and say, this is where we want to be.
Yeah.
Conceivably for the rest of our lives, this is where we want to be. When you have that balance of folks who've lived here their entire life, and when you have those folks that are new to the community, it's important for both sides to listen to each other. So the folks that have been here for 3 or 4 or 5 generations, it's important for the folks that are newer into the community
To feel welcome.
to feel welcome.
And I have a voice and I can be heard.
Correct. That's very, very critical because there's nothing wrong with a new voice being heard.
Right.
I welcome that every day in business. If somebody new sets up or somebody says, hey, I think we should do it like XYZ, perfect. So those folks have to feel welcomed in the community, but it's extremely important for the new folks in the community to not try to come in and fix a wheel. Reinvent the wheel or fix a problem that doesn't exist kind of thing.
Or bring the solutions. My community that I came from did this.
Sure.
Why don't you
Sure.
do this? So I completely agree. It's that the outsiders, well, they're just bringing their ideas from someplace else. I've been here forever. I know the answer. Vice versa. I just got here. I've got all kinds of great ideas.
Sure.
Nobody wants to hear it. And I think that you're saying let's meet in the middle
Sure.
and say how do we together collectively, whether I've been here for a year or I've been here for 30 or 40 or 50 years, that we both have something in common, and that is we care about the community
Right.
that we live in. Let's hear each other out and move forward what makes sense for our community.
It's a very common problem in the retail world at a large corporate level, when you're in management especially, because when you get to top tier management, you're moved from store to store all the time. It's just the nature of the business. State to state, city to city, store to store. And
You don't have roots. You don't
have
have
roots.
roots.
And oftentimes what happens is a manager will come in and say, well, this is what we did at my last store. And because we did it at the last store and it worked in Richmond, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in Kenwood over in Ohio.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to work in Cleveland. But there is real value in that manager coming in. That's why they move so frequently, because they can bring great ideas from here, there, and everywhere into that store and try to inject some of that into that market. But that manager can't go into that new store and say, I'm going to transform this to where I just came from.
Right.
And I'm going to implement everything we did here because everything you're doing is wrong and everything we did here was right. So I don't care what you're doing. Day one, I'm changing everything. And that's never an answer.
I agree.
That's a recipe for disaster. And that's what we avoid, I think, pretty well in Cambridge City. But it's what we really need to be mindful of not rocking the boat too much and trying to come up with solutions that the town really isn't ready for or doesn't really need.
That is such a great way to, I love that you brought it was transparency. And as we're coming to the end of this segment, I really appreciate all of the energy that you brought. We had such a great conversation. We're both very excited about Western Wayne and our outside communities. And if I'm watching this show today, I really encourage people to get involved in their local community, go out and shop these small towns in Richmond and talk to the business owners and talk about what it's like to live there. So I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So thank you. You have been watching INFocus on WGTV Channel 11. I'm Lauralee Hites, the guest host for Eric, and we hope to see you next time.
This broadcast of INFocus is being made possible through the support of Reed Health. Reed Health, right beside you. And by Cronin Toyota and Cronin Nissan, with over 70 cars inside their massive showroom so you can shop in comfort. Cronin Toyota and Cronin Nissan, 5601 National Road East.